Today we're at Paul Clark Volkswagen in Brockton, Massachusetts, and we're picking up a brand new 2015 Golf TDI with a new EA 288 motor. Hi, I'm Corey from ID Parts, and this is the new 2015 Golf TDI. The 2015 Golf TDI is a completely new model from the chassis up. And this Golf is the first of many Volkswagen cars that are going to be built on the new Mqb Modular Platform. Mqb is basically a framework that all new Volkswagens are going to be built on. And anything that's transverse mounted can use this platform. So Volkswagen will be using it on the Jetta, the Golf, the Passat, Tiguan. It can even be made into larger cars as well. One great feature of the Mqb architecture is the new use of high-strength steel. High-strength steel is both lighter and obviously stronger than steel used on the outgoing model, which means this car should handle better and get better fuel economy because it's lighter weight. Engine-wise, the 2015 Golf TDI is the first model to use the EA 288 engine. It's still a 2-liter TDI, but the new 280 EA 288 engine makes 150 horsepower and 236 foot-pounds of torque. This is a 10 horsepower upgrade over the outgoing model, though the torque figure is the same. Fuel economy jumps a bit though, and some of these improvements are due to the addition of diesel exhaust fluid, aka AdBlue, or DEF. And the fill port for the DEF has actually been moved from the trunk to outside the car right next to the diesel fuel tank. Secondly, the engine uses a high-efficiency water-to-air intercooler that's actually welded right in front of the intake manifold. This new intercooler design should improve boost response and reduce air temperature at the same time, making the car more efficient and more powerful. If you want to read more about the EA 288, the exhaust system, and all the technical details, check out the IDParts post at post.IDParts.com. We've got a big article there just about it. Design-wise, design is always personal preference, but we think this thing looks great. It basically looks a lot more aggressive, more sporty than the outgoing model, and it's kind of got that GTI feel. One thing that is really nice about the new design is the new full-size, or it's actually really a panoramic sunroof. It's basically half the size of the roof here, really spacious, it opens up nicely, it looks great. Also great about the new Mark 7 is that it's got options. You can option this thing out with really anything you want. This one's got navigation, keyless entry, the big sunroof, the upgraded stereo, it's got the backup camera and the Volkswagen logo, it's got LED ambient interior lighting, all these nice things, but it stickers for over $30,000, so watch the options, it can get expensive. It also comes with free scheduled maintenance for 1 year or 10,000 miles. Now let's climb inside the car and take a look, and the first thing I notice is that the dashboard is no longer flat, it's curved towards the driver just like it was in the Mark IV. We like that design, and the other thing is this black plastic is now this high gloss kind of mirror effect stuff, which looks good, and there's this brushed aluminum look plastic all over the place as well, which makes the whole interior kind of feel a little more upgraded. It's around the gauge clusters on the steering wheel, it's kind of all over the place. Looking up, the other big thing I noticed is that the interior lights are now all LED. They're bright white LED, it'll be cool to see these at night, they'll look differently. And the other big difference are these seats. These are leatherette seats, but they've definitely got a more sporty, almost R32 look to them, and they've got nice gray stitching too. So the back seats in Volkswagens have always, or at least in Jetta series, have always been kind of Jekyll and Hyde. The Jetta 3 had this big spacious back seat. Then with the Jetta 4, it got small again. The Jetta 5, it was big again. And it looks in this, they've kind of, I would say, averaged out the difference between the 4 and the 5. It's definitely not as spacious as the 5 was, or the 6, but it's definitely not as cramped as the Mark IV was. We got vents down here as always, but gone is the power outlet door that was here on the Golf 6 models. What's interesting is that unlike the front that has soft touch dash, the rear doors are all hard plastic. Again, we've got the LED lights for the passengers as well. Now let's take a look at the cargo area. Pops open with the Volkswagen latch, just like the Mark 6, and it's got the cargo cover which lifts up with strings. The bottom area flips up like always, and new for this year are these spring-loaded latches that hold the cover up, which is different from the prop prod. With that up, we can see the donut spare, no longer a full-size spare, and inside that is the Fender Premium audio system subwoofer. Another interesting thing is that there's about 5 inches between the spare tire and the top of the bottom of the floor there, which is some extra storage space, which is nice. With the seats folded up, we get about 29 inches of space, and the seats, as always, are a 60-40 split. Fold them down and we'll remeasure, and we get about 5 feet of space with the seats down as well, which isn't too bad. We also wanted to show you the interior here, which is a departure from Volkswagen. It's no longer blue or red and white. It's all white. The font's also a little bit different too, which definitely makes it feel a little luxurious, if not a little bit Vegas hotel-y, but the steering wheel controls are nice and white as well. They come out, they look really good, especially the paddle shifters back there. You can see the off. The whole interior is also lit with LEDs, ambient style. You can see my foot being lit up by the LED down in the footwell. And as we pull back here, you can also see LEDs in the door opening pull, the door handle, and then this little strip to the left there. Once we take the engine cover off, we can see that the new motor looks very much like the old motor does, with a couple of really notable exceptions. Things that are the same. Fuel filter is still located here. It's a different style than what we're used to though. High pressure pump is here. Fuel rail is there. Everyone looks pretty much the same configuration wise. Turbocharger obviously located in the back there. Big thing to notice here is in the front, the Vallejo water to air intercooler. You've got these two coolant lines here which cycle coolant, which goes through a separate radiator in the front of the car, and it cools the intake air literally as it comes into the intake manifold. There's no separate piping, so literally it goes from the turbo right to this intercooler right into the motor. Second thing is back here is the diesel particulate filter, which is now bolted directly to the turbocharger and is more of a round canister design than kind of a big brick design like the older car. We also thought this was kind of cute, the coolant bottle, which is kind of a mushroom now, and you know, the new G13 coolant, which is really kind of a deep purple rather than a pink. Driving this new Mark 6 is a couple things that are immediately apparent. I mean, the first is this new chassis is just fantastic. You can feel how much stiffer it is, especially over the outgoing Golf 6, which is a pretty stiff car as well. But the whole thing with all this high-strength steel, which is so stiff and so light, it's very athletic feeling, especially when you're turning the wheel. It's very responsive. It's not a lot of body roll, but when it does roll, you don't feel like the whole chassis is shifting too. It'll roll a bit, but then it'll hold firm. That's that chassis really holding its shape, even when under stress. Another thing that I noticed is that the interior, which is really high quality stuff, is laid out really, really well, and I didn't quite appreciate it until now, where the HVAC controls are higher, they're easy to use, the buttons on the radio are pretty big. You can turn the fan all the way up, you can turn the whole system off. It's got a button to sync or unsync the two passengers. It's also got 3-stage heated seats, both for the driver and the passenger. The other thing which is really impressive are these steering wheel mounted controls. The outgoing Volkswagen had this kind of series of square pads that were a little bit weird to use. These at least have labels on them, and you can do more with them. The in-cluster display has also been upgraded, and it's got all these different features which now are more properly marked, and you can, you know, look at everything from your MFI data, which now has 3 levels rather than 2 of tracking, as well as control the navigation system and the radio. All Volkswagens produced in 2005, all the TDIs at least, have incorporated this electric assisted steering. What's nice about this car is that at low speeds like this, it's really easy to turn the wheel. It's really, really light, but when you're at highway speeds, 70 miles an hour, it's very, very firm. It's very heavy. Therefore, the car doesn't feel as twitchy, and it tracks really straight. We think they kind of finally got the balance of this steering really nice, because even now you can feel it's a lot heavier, but when we took that turn back there, it was, you know, light as a finger. That makes the car just really easy to drive. The 2014, or now the 2015, every year they've been upgrading the DSG programming. You're driving this thing around and you can't even tell that it's shifting. It's got 6 gears, but it's going up and down, matching revs. There's no lurching, there's no gear engagement noises. Overall, it just works well. I gotta say, one thing I don't like as much is the radio interface. The old interface was, I guess, much more basic, but it was a lot easier to use. It had really big buttons. These buttons are pretty small, and if you're driving around, they're kind of hard to hit. This one has new features where you can drag it, and you can really kind of do stuff. It's definitely more interactive than the old system, but I think it requires more attention to use while you're driving, which isn't a good thing in my book. Let's take a look at this really giant sunroof here. It's got a shade, which isn't solid. It's kind of see-through like the Sportwagon was. Pull that back. And gone are the days of the Volkswagen knob. Unfortunately, we love that knob. It's something we've gotten used to over the years, but now it's more of a traditional switch system. Push it back once and the thing goes all the way back. It's really a beautiful thing. And unlike the older models, the glass actually goes above the car, so you don't lose any of the headroom that you normally would lose when you get a sunroof in a car. Close that up. It of course also has a vent feature, which is just as you would expect it to be, I guess. On the highway, this thing is certainly much quieter than the outgoing model, especially in wind noise. Doing 70 miles an hour, you know, I'm hard pressed to hear any wind noise, really. It's definitely quiet. You still get some road noise, but it's, you know, and you hear that motorcycle going by. So, you know, you're not talking about an Audi here, but compared to the outgoing model, which was pretty good the way it was, this one's definitely a big improvement. One thing I'm extremely impressed with is the visibility. Newer cars with higher sills and more molding, they tend to suffer in the visibility, especially out the back. This car, I think, is better than the outgoing car in a lot of ways. The door sills are lower, so it's easy to see cars next to you. It's got this little kind of window thing here, which is kind of strange, but actually is kind of nice. You end up looking through that quite often, which is surprising to me. And seeing out the back is beautiful. The C-pillar is not that big, and it really doesn't, it's placed in a way that where it doesn't get in the way of your big rear window or the big passenger windows. Now let's head to the ID Parts garage and see what this thing looks like from underneath. All right, so we just got the car on the lift, and we'll do a little bit of a techie overview here, just to look at what components this car has, which is probably different than what the Mark 6 had. Belly pan, as always, held in with torque screws, just as always. What's really cool about this and some of the other newer models is that it has underbody cladding throughout the whole midsection. This improves fuel efficiency by reducing the amount of turbulence under the car and reducing drag. It's got these little fins at the end, just like the Sportwagens and the Mark 6 Golfs did. Some things that immediately I noticed were the control arms are back to being stamped steel rather than cast steel or cast iron or cast aluminum for the sport models on both sides. The calipers have they're much bigger calipers and a much bigger carrier. The brake pads are much longer than they used to be. They look like the OE from TRW in this case, which is pretty cool. McPherson front strut system's pretty much the same. Spindle design, very familiar, nothing kind of new there. Tie rod's the same. All right, let's move down here a bit, and we'll take a look at the catalytic converter here. On this car, the DPF is actually located right at the turbo. It's like this bolt-on canister. So there's a lot more space down here, unlike the older models. And from this angle here, you see that there's really a lot of room in this tunnel. And you've just got a flex section, you've got a catalytic converter, you've got the exhaust flap that all of them have. Although on this model, it looks like it's welded in place, which may be making replacing them difficult. The old ones were bolted in with two gaskets, and they've been failing, so you had to replace it. Hopefully this one doesn't fail, so you don't have any problems replacing it in the future. And then the big deal of the Mark 7 is this big beam. We're back to the Mark 4 years where the rear suspension is a live axle or a torsion beam design, depending on how you're asking. Same kind of setup as the Mark 4. You've got just a big bushing in the front, trailing arm style. This is a much bigger bar than was on the Mark 4s. Overall, though, during our test drive, we didn't really notice that the car ran or rode that much differently than a Golf 7 did. So, while this is technically less advanced of a design, it seems like they tuned it right, therefore it doesn't really suffer for it. You look at the rear shocks here. Again, same thing as we're used to even on a Mark 4, where you've got just a shock and a spring design. Looks like the OE ones are made by Sachs in Mexico. That's pretty cool. You've got a fuel tank here, and this is the DEF tank actually. If we pull back a bit, you'll see that this DEF tank is much smaller than the diesel tank, which is here. This tank is probably why they didn't put independent suspension on it, because where would you put the independent suspension? The tank is taking up all the space where the independent suspension would go. That would normally be bolted here. So on the diesel models, we'll probably never see independent suspension because of that tank. With the engine cover off, we can see that Volkswagen did a couple things differently here. Mainly, they added a plastic cover to the oil pan. And if you've ever gotten into an accident or you've ever hit something with your TDI oil pan, you'll know how valuable that is. It looks like it's just more for sound deadening, but it'll protect, against minor bumps and bruises. Oil drain plug is right back here, just like always. Same 17 millimeter head, 14 millimeter plug. DSG transmission, as always, takes up a huge amount of room. And the final thing we found while we were here is the oil filter. You'll notice, or if you noticed, you're paying attention while we were going over the car, or the engine from the top, the oil filter was not where it belonged. We found it. It's located right there, right in the way of all this other stuff. We got a wiring loom here, and what's going to be difficult about this is it's still a insert style filter. It's more of a cartridge style filter, which means that you're going to have to take that top off and then get covered in oil before you can put the new oil filter in. It does have what looks like a little drain port there, and there's probably going to be an adapter that you can put in and drain the oil filter before you open it up. Whatever the case is, it's definitely a lot harder than it used to be with the topside oil change, but I guess it is what it is, and they put it where they could fit it. So what do we think overall? Well, this is a fantastic car. All the benefits of the diesel, great miles per gallon, great response, with none of the negatives, and it's all wrapped up in a really good looking shell. The new motor is certainly faster on the highway, but the small MPG bump is really what makes it great. This car was fully optioned out, making it a very nice ride inside and out, but honestly we're looking forward to seeing a base model. Leatherette seats, stick shift, no sunroof, basically as base as we can get it. With a base price of $22,000, a new base Golf is an amazing value. These new 2015 Golfs are available at dealerships now, and the new wagon version should be around sometime mid-summer 2015. Sadly though, it doesn't look like we're going to ever see another two-door Golf TDI in the USA. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Check out our other videos. Leave us comments below if you have questions. That's it. Take care.